Deputies make mistakes, police officers make mistakes, we all make mistakes. But it's not the responsibility of the general or the president if you have a deserter. You look into this, we're looking into this aggressively, and we'll take care of it, and justice will be served.
Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel facing mounting pressure to resign over claims that his deputies received more than a dozen calls between 2008 to 2017 warning them about Nicholas Cruz, with 2 calls specifically citing concerns he could open fire inside a school. Both calls have since prompted investigations by Internal Affairs. This as the sheriff's office also investigates reports that deputies waited outside during the Valentine's Day shooting that left 17 people dead. Let's bring in our legal panel. Bob Schalk is here and Keisha Hebben. They're both defense attorneys and former prosecutors. And guys, of course, the investigation into the deputies' response is still ongoing. Of course, lawyers are also sizing up this case. And so I want to know if it's possible that those officers could face criminal charges or civil charges. Keisha.
I think the likelihood of criminal charges sticking would be very slim. But as far as civil charges and lawsuits, they absolutely were negligent in this case because they have a duty to serve and protect, and they failed to protect the individuals in that school. So I see tons of lawsuits from the victims' family members.
I agree. I think criminally it's going to be a stretch to try to get them for some sort of negligent homicide. They weren't the actors. They weren't the principals. We don't know what witnesses are saying they did versus what they didn't do. Are there any body cameras, etc.? But as Keisha pointed out, civilly, the negligence that they exerted, which the sheriff's department is acknowledging, we were negligent, they did not go inside, exposes them civilly to lawsuits for sure. The question is going to be whether or not the families see that being a just end to all of this going after the sheriff's department. We don't know.
Yeah, so the deputies could face charges, and you're saying also possibly the sheriff's department too. What about the school district?
Well, I think, again, the school district as well, as because you're questioning whether or not did the school district do everything they could to prevent this from happening. What security measures were in place that potentially weren't followed? How did this individual, Mr. Cruz, get access to a building to be able to walk in a door? Were they locked doors? Were they leaving doors open? Again, all part of the investigation.
And when you have civil lawsuits, you name any and everyone that could be a possible defendant. You don't want to leave anyone out. So I see the school being sued, the sheriff's department, the superintendent, the school district. There's so many possible defendants. But with the case with the officers, I'm sure their lawyer would say, well, they were acting within the scope of their employment. It wasn't a personal thing. So they would go more so after the actual department.
And now you have 74 state lawmakers in Florida calling for the sheriff, Scott Israel, to step down. Does this imply or impact legal liability for the sheriff himself?
Well, again, he would be probably indemnified. You're not going to go after them individually, as Keisha pointed out. You'll name them as defendants, but however, their unions will have attorneys that will move to have them severed from any big lawsuit. They'll either go after the county itself or the sheriff's department for purposes of that. However, again, the calls for him to step down or resign, you're going to start seeing mounting pressure for that. And here's why. Think about the number of times that the sheriff's department was called with respect to this individual or potentially received tips that he was the threat. Okay, you did potentially nothing about it or little to nothing about it. Secondly, he was able to still, after all of these tips, apply for, in February of 2017, an AR-15 assault rifle. The only way he would have prevented from doing it is the background check would have been a felony on his record or a domestic conviction. There were calls by his mother for domestic incidents at the house. If there was an arrest or a conviction or something to that effect, this could have potentially all been prevented. Again, what liability are they going to have for not acting or acting minimally?
And I believe that the fact that they are asking him to resign and that other officer who was the school resource officer was suspended and ultimately resigned will strengthen the cases for civil liability and with the families, because it shows something clearly was wrong. Someone dropped the ball.
Where else might the legal liability trail lead?
Again, you know, the question is background checks. Did the gun shop do everything? It appears as if they did legally, but you do see lawsuits going after gun manufacturers, going after gun shops for the manner in which backgrounds were conducted. So there's another realm, but I think it's going to be more focused on the sheriff's department and the school district.
And then you have the calls that went to the local FBI office that didn't make it up to the Miami Field office.
Absolutely. There's so much here that shows that this could have been prevented, and major law enforcement agencies such as as the FBI, did nothing to prevent it, and that's going to be a problem. You have 17 people dead and more people injured, all because no one flagged that this guy clearly had a problem, mental health issues. He was obsessed with guns. He threatened, I believe he threatened someone before. So there are going to be a lot of lawsuits and a lot of people being fired. And
meanwhile, of course, we can't even imagine what those poor families are going through, especially the parents who lost children at school. Bob Schalk, Keisha Hebben, thank you both.
Thank you, Rethel.
Okay.